All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Matt. I'm Monal Choksi, and I lead the UX research team at Lyft. And as Matt mentioned, I'm going to tell you how to succeed as a UX research manager by capitalizing on your strengths as a researcher. So, in true researcher fashion, I'm going to start with some questions for all of you. So I'd love to see a raise of hands. How many of you are currently researchers looking to move into management? All right, great. And how many of you are already managers? Oh, wow, we got lots of you. So first I have to say, it's awesome to be in a room with so many of researchers. So really excited to be surrounded by you all. For those of you who are managers, how many of you were previously or still are researchers today? Awesome. So I want you to think back to when you first became a manager. Think about that transition. I'm betting that for many of us, it was a sudden move, and congrats. Yesterday you were a researcher, and today you're a manager. But how many of you felt prepared to make that move? This is me. I have to say, I was excited, but also nervous. I hadn't really done much management training. Brief history, I started my career as a researcher/designer in the dot-com age at various startups. And then in the 2000s, I was a researcher at Yahoo, and I started thinking about wanting to manage. Unfortunately, Yahoo had started to struggle as a company, and management positions were being eliminated. But I had fortunately had the opportunity to work with a woman named Amanda Linden, who knew my work well. And she had moved to Intuit, where she had been looking for a research leader. Luckily, she made the leap in terms of hiring me on as a manager there. With that managerial experience under my belt, I moved to Berlin and then started the research team at SoundCloud. And a few years later, I came back to San Francisco to establish the UX research discipline at Lyft when it was just a few hundred people. And over the last 4 years, I've really had the opportunity to grow the team from just one person myself to over 20. So now, looking back, I started thinking about, in prep for this talk, what was it that made Amanda know that I was manager material? So I asked her so I could share with all of you. And here's what she said. So Amanda is a director of product design at Facebook today. And she said she looks for 3 things when moving people from individual contributor to manager. And those are: shows the capacity to think about we before me, can think strategically, understanding the needs of the business, and has strong collaboration and communication skills, speaking with confidence and clarity, and can tell a story and inspire a team. I think this is a great list, and I was really excited by her faith in me and that opportunity to manage. But I was still left wondering when I started as a manager, am I doing this right? How did you know how to become a manager? I asked several leaders in our field this very question. So Amaya Bekvar-Weddle is the Senior Director of Research and Experiences at MindBody. And in answering this question, she said, I didn't very well. I always thought leadership was more or less an innate trait or talent, like charisma. Some people just have it. But then she went on to say, I attended my first leadership training and realized that leadership is a set of very well-defined practices, and that you could learn them by practicing. Ariana Mcclain is the director of UX research at Cruise, and in answering the same question, she said, I started writing down a list of qualities that I liked and didn't like in the people who manage me. In fact, it's something I continue to do. Great advice. And Annie Steele, who's the head of research at Stripe, said, I made a lot of mistakes in my first year of management. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know that I could say that I didn't know. In speaking to all of these leaders, I actually felt relieved. because me too. I experience all of these same things, and I'm constantly learning every day. The truth is, becoming a manager does require training and learning a new set of skills, because you do take on new responsibilities. And what we do is not always easy. So Altay Sendel, who's the head of research at Pinterest, says, management is hard. We live and learn through experiences of our own and those we observe, and adjust accordingly as we grow and engage with more and more diverse situations that stretch and challenge us. This sounds pretty intimidating, but I want you to know that we, as UX researchers, do make great managers. So through my management career over the years, I've learned that we have skills that allow us to deal with some of the challenging aspects of management. So for those of you who are thinking about moving into management, don't fear. You've always had the power, as Glinda the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz, one of my favorite childhood movies, tells Dorothy. And I'll show you that we're better set up for success in management than many. So today in this talk, I'm going to go over what makes for a good manager, the 3 parts to managing and why we're set up to do each of these parts well. And I'll wrap up with some of my thoughts on why I think UX researchers make great managers. As you'll see, I spent a lot of time researching this topic and hearing from other leaders in our field. And I'm excited to share this all with you with the goal of helping grow our field. So let's start by asking, what makes for a great or a good manager? Julie Zhu, who's the VP of Product Design at Facebook, recently wrote a book called The Making of a Manager. And this is a great read for those of you, especially for those of you who are first-time managers or are looking to move into management. In it, she tells us that managers share a common purpose, helping a group of people achieve a common goal. A great manager's team will consistently achieve great outcomes. However, there is a difference between management and leadership. The Harvard Business Review puts it like this: management consists of controlling a group or a set of entities to accomplish a goal. And that's very similar to what Julie had defined management as. However, they go on to say, leadership refers to an individual's ability to influence, motivate, and enable others to contribute towards organizational success. More simply put, management is a role, and leadership is how you show up, said by Mia Bloom, who is a design leadership coach. We can think about management and leadership in a Venn diagram. On the left, we have management, on the right, leadership. And when thinking about what a manager might be described as, we might think of the words such as organizes, delegates, plans. On the right, we might think about a leader as someone who influences, motivates, and excites. The bottom line is that we can be leaders without managing people. However, the best managers are also strong leaders. So when describing managers, I'll be including leadership traits in addition to traditional management tasks. I'll be leaning into the sweet spot right here. Great, so let's quickly review some of the qualities of strong managers. I'm going to share a list of attributes that I found in the literature over and over again. So in order to be a strong manager, it's best to be a good communicator with the ability to both listen and share information. Being a strong decision maker. Being collaborative and influential, which are leadership traits that really result from building strong relationships. Being inspiring and motivating to help drive your team. And being proactive and productive, which demonstrates a focus on getting results. And finally, great managers focus on self-development and their own growth. They really know their strengths and weaknesses and ask for and act on feedback often. So this list provides a backdrop of what makes for a good manager and a leader, and something to just keep in mind throughout the rest of the talk. Okay, great. So I'm going to go into the 3 parts of managing and how our research skills can play a strong part in our success with each. Okay, we can think of managing into 3 parts: managing down, managing across, and managing up. Each of these is important in our roles as managers. Traditional management tasks are typically seen in the managing down category, which includes managing our teams and resources. However, as a leader, it's also important to manage across and manage up. Managing across really has to do with building relationships and garnering influence with cross-functional partners and stakeholders. Managing up has to do with elevating and advocating your team's work and demonstrating the influence it has had. So let's dive into each of these areas, starting with managing down. In Julie Zhu's book, she talks about management tasks falling neatly into 3 areas: purpose, people, and process. However, I'm going to add one more to that, and that's the work. So looking at each of these a little bit more, for purpose, how many of you know your company's vision or mission statement? Raise of hands. Wonderful. All right, and how many of you have a mission or vision statement for your research team? Okay, we see about half of you. So as leaders, setting a shared vision and mission is a great way to align our teams. Google's manager research shows that, quote, "A clear team vision helps team members know where they're going, what to work on, and inspires them with a clear connection to the organization's mission." At Lyft, our research team started with our company's mission and vision statement, which is to improve people's lives with the world's best transportation. And as a UX research team, we know we're focused on improving people's lives, and this is where we fit into the mission. So with that as a starting point, we developed our own mission and vision statement with input from our stakeholders. And here's what we found and came up with. We improve people's lives by driving strategic decisions for our products and company. Through our insights, we align stakeholders and build company-wide user empathy. This is our North Star and drives us both as individuals and as a team. So overall, when it comes to purpose and setting a vision for our teams, as UX researchers, we've got this. Delivering on purpose often requires doing internal research and interviewing stakeholders across the company. We can leverage our brainstorming and facilitation skills that we've learned as researchers in order to create a shared vision across our UX research team. All right, so managing down also includes managing people. And this includes giving feedback, developing talent, and building culture. So what do we always say about research? Do it early and do it often. The same thing goes with giving feedback, both positive and constructive. Carol Rossi, who is the director of UX research at NerdWallet, says, "I spent a lot of time thinking about how to give constructive feedback and helping team members with growth and development." It's important for managers to develop talent by mentoring and coaching your directs. We should seek to understand what each of our directs want in their short and long-term careers and goals. This way, we can then find opportunities that align with their interests and their goals. So for example, at Lyft, several UX researchers were eager to learn ways of up-leveling their insights and the quality of their insights. So as a result, we got an expert to come in and do a 2-day training with us in order to learn how to create frameworks for our insights. As you can see, there are several of us here who are engaged in the process. And as a bonus, because this was a shared training, people have been able to lean on each other and not just their managers for help and feedback. When it comes to building culture, it's important for managers to help foster a healthy team culture, which relies on trust and psychological safety. So according to Forbes, empathetic, trust-based human leadership is the most effective way to lead a team. And in her book, Julie Zhu talks about building trust with your team. Her advice is to respect and care about your report, invest time to help them, be honest and transparent about their performance, and also admit your own mistakes and growth areas. The Harvard Business Review talks about psychological safety, which is the belief that you won't be punished when you make a mistake. They say, psychological safety allows for moderate risk-taking, speaking your mind, creativity, and sticking your neck out without fear of having it cut off. Just the types of behavior that lead to market breakthroughs. In fact, Google's 2-year study on team performance revealed that psychological safety was the one thing that the highest performing teams had in common. So when building our team culture at Lyft, I only needed to observe what the team did naturally and provide more opportunities around that. For example, our team members come from a variety of backgrounds and perspectives, and I've noticed 2 things. One, that they're very supportive of one another and eager to help each other out. And 2, they're excited to learn new skills. So like you see here, I'd often spot 2 researchers sitting together, just giving each other feedback, offering help and advice, and helping each other on projects. And so after doing some internal research with my team, we established 2 team programs. The first is called peer mentoring. And every other Friday, we put aside an hour for one of the team members to be able to share a skill or a methodology with the rest of the team. The other is called research jams. And this is where team members can bring a problem to the group in order to brainstorm around it or to get feedback. So these programs have really helped further build and promote the culture that the team was already engaged in organically. So when it comes to managing people, as UX researchers, we've got this. We make great people managers. We're really well known, as you all know, as user researchers, for having empathy when it comes to doing our research, and that translates really nicely to managing people and leading teams. As researchers, we're also skilled observers of users and social dynamics in the real world. And now we can just take that skill set and apply it to our team and the culture within our company. Giving feedback and developing talent requires really great communication skills, including asking good questions and being an active listener. And these are 2 key skills of UX researchers. Great. So moving on to process, which includes planning and resourcing, creating processes, and removing blockers. When I think about planning and resourcing, the first thing that comes to mind is roadmaps. So creating UX research roadmaps in particular is often a challenge, because I don't know about you and all your teams, but I know that we often get way more requests than we can take on. We also need to determine who's going to do the work, and with that, we need to be able to hire folks and build our team appropriately. So here's a photo of me over 4 years ago as Lyft's lone UX researcher doing research in a car with members of our design team. And as Lyft's very first researcher, I had this amazing opportunity to build our team from scratch. So since then, we've grown to over 20 people, and we continue to grow quickly. That said, for every hire, we've had to plan strategically to ensure that the needed diversity across skill sets and levels of seniority, and to align to the needs of our roadmap and to our team overall. For example, we've hired folks with more service design research experience for operations-heavy areas, such as Express Drive, which might not be in Toronto yet, but it allows drivers to rent a car in order to drive with Lyft. And we've also included folks with backgrounds in mixed methods in order to meet the needs of our growth and marketplace teams. I also considered how to best set the team up for success given our larger company culture. at Lyft, there's a super strong culture around collaboration and community. So in planning the resources for the UX research team, I wanted to embed each researcher within each of the cross-functional product teams. That way, it would provide us with a model of collaboration and ownership. It really allowed us to be able to ensure for research where it's needed across the entire product lifecycle, and allow each person to be the go-to expert for that user type and that product. And finally, being a part of the team with a voice and a seat at the table. These were important aspects given our company's culture of collaboration, and it also set us up really well to be able to collaborate with our stakeholders in understanding what's most needed research-wise. When thinking about the process bucket, Julie Zhu has a lot to say about creating processes. As a manager, part of your job is the cultivation of playbooks. How to run a team meeting, how to close a new hire, and how to complete a project on time and on budget. These are just a few of the processes that good managers are expected to put into place for teams to run smoothly. And finally, removing blockers. Our teams rely on us to clear the path for them to get work done. So many managers talk about being a shit umbrella. They aim to protect their team from obstacles that may get in their way. So how do we do when managing process? You guessed right, we got this. For planning and resourcing, we can drive what's on our team's roadmap and know who to hire by doing internal research with our partners and stakeholders. When it comes to creating processes, we have great organizational and project management skills, and that comes from being a researcher. As you know, running research studies end-to-end requires a large amount of planning, organization, and collaboration with not only our stakeholders, but our participants, and also the lots and lots of data that we collect. And when it comes to removing obstacles, our empathy and communication skills are key to working with partners in order to unblock our team. Great. The last part of managing down is the work. And this means trusting and empowering your team so that you're able to delegate work, as well as setting clear expectations around the work. So when it comes to trusting and empowering others, an article in Forbes says, leadership requires you to rely on someone else. You have to trust their instincts and trust yourself to put your faith in someone who isn't you. And that's hard for a lot of managers. And Kat Murray, who is a UX research manager at Lyft, adds to that. She said, trusting your team can feel risky as the manager is accountable, but it's worth it on a whole. You can't be in the weeds on everything. When it comes to setting expectations, Christina Janzer, who is the Director of Research and Analytics at Slack, and who is also giving a keynote tomorrow, gives this advice. Share clear expectations for what needs to be done. Share information about the company or product to enable the team to make better decisions and do better work. So, how many of you have reported to someone who was never a researcher or who didn't fully understand what you did as a researcher? All right, almost everyone's hands went up, and mine too. So I have to say that I'm super excited that as a discipline, we've finally grown to the point where it's becoming more and more common to see UX researchers being managed by research managers, rather than, say, a product or a design manager, someone else who might not fully understand what it is we do. Here's our Lyft research team member and I reviewing findings from a large study that she did. As UX researchers ourselves, we are best positioned to mentor and coach our teams. We can empathize with the needs and challenges that researchers have to face. We also have a really good sense of what can be delegated and where to best empower our teams. And we also know what it means to set clear expectations around the work. not just with our team members, but also with our stakeholders. For example, helping them understand the proper timeframes that are needed in order to get quality research results. Overall, we make great managers, and we're even better positioned to manage UX researchers than anyone else. So when it comes to managing the work, we're all over this. The strongest attribute that we can draw upon from our UX research toolkit here is empathy for the work, as well as our data synthesis skills in order to cull down and share just the right information with our team members. And this empathy, along with the same communication skills that we've seen necessary for all of these parts, have allowed us to be great UX managers for the work to be done. All right, phew. That was a lot, but we do a lot when managing down. And it's clear that these tasks take up a lot of our time. But given our strong sense of empathy for the work and the people, this can be some of the most rewarding part of our job. I'm going to sum up this section with a quote from Gabe Trianfi, who is a UX research manager at Lyft and previously led research at Waymo and Pinterest. And he says, "Every manager should do their best to be the sort of manager you have always wished you had as a researcher." So with that, let's see what managing across looks like. Simply put, managing across is all about building relationships with our partners and stakeholders and garnering influence. These are leadership skills. We don't need to be people managers in order to do this well. But first, we need to build strong relationships to gain influence and to be able to work alongside our partners to champion user-centered outcomes. So, for example, when I started at Lyft, I was our first researcher, and I'd heard of plans to build additional research teams across the company in marketing and in support. But I wanted to make sure that we weren't siloed, as I had seen go badly at past companies. So I began what's now known as our Research and Insights group. This group has grown immensely and still meets regularly in order to share knowledge and to collaborate. And the strong relationships we've formed have allowed us to work together whenever possible and also ensure that we don't duplicate efforts. One of the other benefits to having this group is that we've used these relationships to drive business decisions. Collectively, we've worked together to try and form a single voice of truth for the company. And because it's a single voice, it's a more influential one and a stronger voice for folks to pay attention to. Another way to manage across is to manage by leading cross-functional initiatives. So McKinsey mentions that if you want to build a movement, lead from the front with an inspiring story to win the hearts and minds of colleagues, with a clear action plan to deliver tangible results. When I read this quote, the first thing that comes to my mind is an inspiring story to win the hearts and minds of colleagues. That comes from users. And so we can use storytelling around our users in order to help drive user-centered outcomes and decisions for the business by partnering with our stakeholders. Overall, when it comes to managing across, we're ready. We've got this. We are the experts at building relationships. If you think about it, we have practice doing this with every single research study session because we have mere minutes at the beginning of a study in order to form those strong relationships with our participants. Luckily for us, as managers, we have more than a few minutes to build these relationships. As researchers, we also already use our empathy, communication, and collaboration skills when doing cross-functional research with our partners. Every study, we want to try and bring in other folks from the company in order to participate, observe, and help us come up with recommendations and drive results forward. So we've done a great job of being able to build relationships and garner influence in that way already. So now, as UX research leaders and managers, we just need to do more of the same thing and take it up a notch. The main difference here is that often we're going to be using the work of our team members instead of our own research. And finally, let's talk about managing up. Managing up, again, centers around leadership. It has to do with managing our relationship with our boss and other leaders. For research and insights teams, this often means elevating and advocating the insights uncovered by our team and demonstrating the influence it's had. So Harvard Business Review wrote an article on what everyone should know about managing up. And the key insight there is the most important skill to master is figuring out how to be a genuine source of help, creating value for both your boss and your company. So some key tasks in managing up are first building those relationships with your boss and company leaders, driving the visibility of your team's work and promoting it, and also demonstrating the influence that that work has had, driving strategic business decisions with the insights, and finally, evangelizing UX research. And that's especially important in companies where the value of what we do is not fully understood. I'm guessing that the majority of you here have pretty small research teams. And so the more we can point to business successes as a result of our research, the better we'll do at growing our teams and thus building a more user-centered organization. So at Lyft, in order to demonstrate how we've influenced the business, we track the impact of every study that we do. Specifically, we capture the decisions that were made as a result of research, and then track the business metrics that have changed as a result of those decisions. We also take as many opportunities as possible to present and make visible what our team does, as you can see here, and the research findings that we had. Here's me and another team member presenting at our Tech All Hands at Lyft. So finally, for managing up, you know the answer. We've got this. Here we use many of the same qualities that help us with managing across, and then some. As we saw earlier, the quote from the Harvard Business Review mentions that the key skill to master when managing up is figuring out how to best create value, which we can accomplish by doing internal research. We can also use the presentation and storytelling skills that we've learned as researchers to build interest and demonstrate value, but this time for execs and our boss. So, we've now reviewed the 3 parts to managing: down, across, and up, and what it means to do them well. And I've also shared how we can utilize our skills as researchers to help us succeed as people managers and leaders for our companies. Honestly, all of these skills can be used across all 3, and I've just highlighted some of our key skills here. But overall, we should remember that when it comes to being a good manager, the traditional management tasks and managing down are important, but we should also think about managing across and up, because especially as UX research teams, we need to really be able to make our work visible and help drive the business forward as we look to grow. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap up with a few final thoughts on why we make great managers. So, how many of you have listened to Steve Portigal's podcast, Dollars to Donuts? All right, quite a few of you. So for those of you who haven't, it's a great resource for UX research managers or those who are looking to move into management, because Steve interviews exclusively people who are research leaders in their organization. Several of the managers that I quoted in my talk have been interviewed by Steve, and I actually had the privilege of being interviewed by Steve a few years ago. In that episode, I mentioned 3 qualities of UX researchers that I look for when I'm hiring candidates. And those are having empathy, analytical thinking skills, and organizational or project management skills. And as Steve very astutely noticed, these are kind of a summary of what is needed in order to do good research. However, I am adding one more to that list, and that is communication and collaboration skills. At Lyft, I tell my team that good research and uncovering deep insights is only half of their job. And of course, this requires empathy, analytical and organizational thinking, analytical skills, and organizational skills. However, the other half of their jobs is to influence and drive decisions, because even if you do the best research there is out there, it's not going to make a difference unless we help ensure that it does. So that requires great communication and collaboration skills. So in looking at this list of UX researcher attributes, we can already see several things that make for strengths as managers as well. I'm going to leave you with this final point from McKinsey, who did a study in 2015 on leadership. And they found that just 4 kinds of behavior account for 89% of all leadership effectiveness. The first was being supportive. Understand and sense how other people feel, and by showing a sincere interest in those around them, they build trust. So to me, that sounds a lot like empathy. The second behavior was to solve problems effectively. They said problem solving, when information is gathered, analyzed, and considered, precedes decision making. And as I had mentioned at the beginning of the talk, decision making is a quality of a strong manager. In order to solve problems effectively, we need analytical thinking skills. The third behavior of leadership effectiveness was to operate with strong results orientation. And they talk about, quote, how people can emphasize the importance of efficiency and productivity and prioritize the highest value work. In order to operate with strong results orientation, we need great organizational skills. And the final of the 4 behaviors is to seek different perspectives. They say, encourage employees to contribute ideas, give appropriate weight to stakeholder concerns. And in order to seek different perspectives, we not only need empathy, but we need collaboration and communication skills. So looking at this overall, I would say not only are UX researchers well equipped to become managers, but we're also effectively great leaders. So in order to wrap up this talk, if I can leave you with just one thing to remember, it's this. We've got this. UX researchers make great managers. And if you're not already using your research skills, dig back into your research toolkit to utilize them to manage up, across, and down. But also take advantage of management training and leadership opportunities to learn, opportunities for feedback, and everyone in this room in order to learn from as we grow this discipline of ours. I'm so excited to be part of this UX research community, and my goal for all of us in this room is to help successfully grow our field. So let's continue to be our empathetic selves and support one another through this journey. I wanted to thank the UXR Collective for holding this conference and bringing us all together as we grow this discipline, and also to the various leaders who personally provide me with their thoughts and quotes for this talk. And thank you all for listening.